Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, from the latest weather warnings, as we still have plenty of snow and ice and bitterly cold conditions over the next couple of days, but things could be really ramping up in places, as it does look like we are going to see some really quite significant snow during the middle to end of this working week. We are going to see milder air moving in, so there is a chance that some of the precipitation falls as rain, especially towards coastal areas, low-lying areas and further southwards. But in those areas where the precipitation meets that bitterly cold air, then we are going to see some substantial snowfall, and that is what the majority of the runs are showing today. They are disagreeing on their exact timings, the exact positionings, intensities and precipitation typings, but they all are agreeing that we are going to see a heck of a lot more precipitation over the coming days, and a lot of it will have a wintry flavour. We'll run through the latest UKV looking at the precipitation and the temperature over the coming days. We'll have a look at the icon run looking at, of course, the potential big snow event Thursday into Friday that we have been eyeing the past few days. And then we'll look at the longer range charts as well, as they are all looking very unsettled, with a slow transition back towards average conditions towards this upcoming weekend, maybe into next week. But to be honest, all of them are looking pretty chilly, even out towards the middle of the month. So if you are looking forward to a bit of a warm-up, then it doesn't look particularly likely from those long-range charts. Yes, into next week, most runs have got us seeing temperatures around the mid to high single digits, but really just about touching average potentially in some spots. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which do like and subscribe. Now, if you start on the live radar, you can still see we've got plenty of wintry showers, but they're not packing in anywhere near as much, and that's because the wind direction is starting to shift as we start to see some milder air starting to nudge in off the Atlantic. For the time being, though, it is another bitterly cold night. We're recording this close to 8 p.m. on Monday evening. Temperatures already well below freezing in many areas, and we'll continue to see wintry showers pushing in. If you look at those temperatures at the moment, you can see it is bitterly cold. Look at those lighter blues. These are the sort of temperatures you'd expect on a cold night at 6 a.m. just before the sun starts to rise, not at 8 p.m. when the sun only set 3 or 4 hours ago. So temperatures, once again this evening, well below freezing in most spots, down towards -5, -6, -7. Absolutely freezing indeed. Now, you'll have numerous warnings over the next couple of days, but you'll be thinking, why are there no warnings Wednesday to Friday? And the reason for that is because it is still so uncertain. We've been warning about this for the last few days, really, that, to be honest, we're not going to have a clue exactly how things are going to play out. We are going to know with a margin of uncertainty, and unfortunately that margin of uncertainty from the latest runs look like it could be anywhere from some spots seeing 20 centimetres of snow to seeing a little bit of slush and mostly rain. That's the margins we're still playing with, unfortunately, and it's just because of how messy and how marginal the snow is going to be through the rest of this week. And that's why we don't have warnings issued yet, because simply the Met Office are not sure where to put those warnings. And I'm sure we'll see warnings issued tomorrow, whether they're precautionary or they're a bit more detailed, depending on what the models do throw out. But still plenty of warnings issued at the moment. Snow and ice warnings expire at midnight tonight as those snow showers start to get cut off. Still snow showers across the northeast, expiring at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Again, we're not seeing too many, as we saw on the live radar, but still some could push in. Another snow and ice warning issued down the far west. Again, still some snow showers pushing in, as we saw from the live radar. And then a warning here for Northern Ireland, we're seeing some ice and not really a snow warning. And that's because with that slither of milder air, we are going to see rain or a wintry mix starting to fall out of the sky. So for most of the surface, it's more of an ice hazard than a snow hazard. Into Tuesday, still got all of those warnings, and then we start seeing more widespread warnings issued. Another warning issued for northern Scotland for the full 24 hours for further snow showers. And of course, more persistent snow starting to push in. And that's why we've got this warning issued for the rest of Scotland down into the far north and northwest of England, as we start to see more wintriness pushing in. As I said, some of it could turn a little bit more to a mix during the day tomorrow, as temperatures do nudge a few degrees above freezing, and as I said, it is just due to that small slither of milder air. Now, there is still room for uncertainty, so as we'll see from the UKV now, there is going to be rain around, but some of it could fall as snow. Equally, some of the snow could fall as rain. It is very messy picture. We're probably not looking at all snow events, so that means massive totals are unlikely, but it still, as I said, could be very messy, could be very icy, and that still could cause significant issues. Now, after you look at the latest UKV, you see those showers slowly getting cut off this evening, but we start to see a bit of more persistent snow pushing in from the west into the early hours of Tuesday. And this is an Atlantic weather front trying to push in. You see reasonably heavy snow there across much of Scotland and further wintry showers further southwards. And you can see there is going to be some decent snowfall around. That precipitation band pushes further inland, and that snow becomes a little bit more confined to the hills, and that's because of that milder wedge pushing in. As this system sinks southwards, though, that milder wedge does shrink as colder air is tucking in behind the low pressure system and cold air is ahead of it. It's just this milder wedge between these two weather systems. So that's why we've got a bit of snow to the northern edge, snow on the eastern and southern flank of it. Now, this will clear southwards, and it is a mix of rain, sleet and snow. Again, I wouldn't trust 100% what the precipitation typings are here, and it is falling during the middle of the night for areas further south and eastwards. So as I said, there could be a real wintry mix with this. Could be very messy out there, but that will eventually clear. And then as we head into Wednesday, further wintriness further northwards, but it doesn't look too bad of a day for most. Dry in between weather systems, but still really quite cold. Probably not as cold as we've got at the moment, as we see a bit more cloud, a bit more mixing of those air masses. So probably will nudge a few degrees above freezing by day, but still not particularly warm, 2 or 3 degrees in most spots. And then all eyes are out into the Atlantic. We see a little bit of a weather front pushing in. Some runs keep this intact and deliver some light to moderate snowfall into Thursday morning, but here the UKV are really not making much of it, especially further southwards. And then we see this channel low pushing in. Now, at the moment, it initially starts as rain, but look what happens. It bumps into that cold air. We start to see significant snow over the higher ground. And then slowly as the sun sets, we see colder air tucking back in off the North Sea. And then it starts to turn more widely to snow on its back edge. And it turns into a mostly snow event. So it starts as rain, turns to a bit of a mix over higher ground initially, then more towards low-lying areas, and then clears as a mostly snow event, even to areas further southwards and eastwards. And this is why it's such a messy picture. Just look at this. Mixes of rain, sleet and snow. Difference between being at 10 metres of elevation, 100 metres of elevation, could be a few hours difference in terms of snowfall amounts. It could be an extremely messy scenario, extremely on a knife edge. And this is why we don't have warnings issued, even though this is a matter of only 2 or 3 days away from starting to arrive. And my gosh, it looks pretty severe in some spots. There are no warnings just because we are still unsure, and we'll see that from some of the other runs in a few moments' time. But the one thing we have seen today is this system has trended southwards. There are a couple of runs that were taking it through northern England, snow for Scotland, not much else further southwards, mild, wet and windy. Most runs, though, agree with this track, with the main centre of the low through the Channel, the heaviest precipitation across the Midlands into northern England, some runs even across southern England, and then again, where that heavy precipitation meets the cold air, and that cold air is allowed to wrap back in, that's when we start to see heavy snow. Now, I can show you how marginal it is. If we look at the upper air temperatures, 4 degrees across the far southeast and across the Channel, -5 there just to the north, around the Peak District, and bitterly cold air just further north. It's this temperature gradient along this boundary that is why it is so uncertain. Literally 50 to 100 miles difference in the positioning of this low could be the difference for your area between 10, 15, 20 centimetres of wet snow and heavy rain. It is all down to this temperature contrast. Now, this temperature contrast is actually fueling the system. So, yes, if the system's less intense, more likely to be wintry with less milder air mixing in, but equally the precipitation is likely to be lighter as well. Dew points are another big factor. Look at that. 10-degree dew points out in the Channel, 0-degree dew points just further northwards. And again, it's that dividing line where it's very uncertain. Where we see that 0-1 degree boundary, that's most likely where we're going to see the heaviest precipitation and snowfall. And you can see the cold air does tuck in for all after that. So even if you initially see rain, and maybe 90% of the event is rain, there will likely be a bit of back edge snow just because bitty cold air is getting dragged in behind it. You can see the UKV is pretty bullish with very cold air as we head into the weekend, though. Look at this. It tries to put in very cold easterly winds. Still runs are contemplating this idea. ECMWF, as we'll see in a few minutes' time, is contemplating this into next week, trying to pull in a bit of a surface high across Scandinavia and very cold easterly winds back in. Whether it's successful, we'll have to see, but the UKV here is showing the bitterly cold weather continuing into the weekend and maybe even further snowfall. Now, if you look at the precipitation just towards that period, you can see the heavy snow clears, and then we see lots of wintry showers, and again, bits of mixing, and then that easterly wind pushes in, and then, yeah, we could see further wintry showers into the weekend before eventually we see a bit more of a battle going on. Look at the temperatures then tonight, bitterly cold, down towards -5, -6 into Tuesday afternoon. Hardly getting above freezing in most spots, but some areas, 2 or 3 there, slightly milder air starts to mix in. Into the evening, look at this, temperatures not dropping away as much during the night, 3 or 4 degrees in some spots, and that's because of that milder sector. But that milder sector will clear by the early morning, and we could see colder conditions developing behind it. So it is very marginal with that colder sector moving through. If we actually show you on the upper air level, you can see it is a small slither, this slight slither of sort of greens there. That is the milder sector, and you can see that same with the dew points, with the dew points dip above freezing there for a couple of hours as the precipitation moves through. Again, if the cold air does undercut it a little bit more, then there is a chance that more of this falls as snow. So it is still very marginal. ECMWF, funny enough, is showing more of it falling as snow than the UKV is, so we'll have to wait and see. That clears through, and then into Wednesday, it's another very cold day, but more likely 3 to 5 degrees with a bit more sunshine around as all that cloud and precipitation clears. And of course, a bit more mixing of air, which means those temperatures are not quite as frigid. Into Wednesday evening, we're going to start to see a frost develop, but this is where you start to see the battle with the Atlantic air. And this is where that heavy snow starts to arrive. 5 or 6 degrees across the south coast, freezing further northwards, and where that dividing line sets up, you can see a big temperature contrast, heavy snowfall along that boundary. Again, don't take positionings exactly as gospel, but this is roughly what the guidance is. I will warn, there are still a few runs that do take the low much further southwards, keep us in the very cold air with very little precipitation impacting us. So that is something we need to watch out for as well. These channel lows do trend southwards at their later stages, but considering we're 3 days away from this and it is still touching northern England, I very much doubt that this system would completely clear to our south and be across like the Bay of Biscay, for example, but definitely could trend further southwards. We'll have to wait and see. But into the weekend, it looks bitterly cold once again as easterly winds try to pile in. Now, if you look at the icon run, just to show you what that is showing, as we head into the next couple of hours, see that low developing, bit of snow, and you can see it's a real mix there into Wednesday morning. Bit of snow there over the higher ground. You see the Chilterns, for example, is there a bit of pink. Literally a couple hundred metres of elevation could be the difference between a few centimetres of snow and nothing, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. That clears and it's a drier, brighter day. You see that transient weather front further northwards into Thursday could give a bit of snow, and the next band moves in. It's rain initially, but then it starts to turn more to heavy snow in a similar area to the UKV, so very, very similar track. And again, very heavy snow on its back edge as it does clear through. And then again, we see an attempt at easterly winds, but the icon has more of a westerly winning out by the weekend. Now, if you look at the GFS, to have a look at those longer term signals, again, low pressure systems clearing through over the next few days. That system developing across the southeast, bitterly cold as it does clear through with heavy snowfall. And then you can see the Atlantic does break through. It's this Scandinavian high here, which the UKV was developing, was trying to push in an easterly wind. But the GFS has Atlantic winning. The jet stream is still to our south, so it'll still be cool and cold, as I said, but unlikely to develop snowy conditions. It's more likely to be cold rain. Most areas kind of 5 or 6 degree days and cold rain. Still lots of high pressure to our east, so I wouldn't be surprised if this run is wrong and we do develop more of an easterly wind, but GFS isn't having any of it. If you actually do look at the UK Met Office run, you can see what that was showing longer term with those easterly winds trying to push in. You can see 168 hours, bitterly cold airs just to our east trying to fight against that. So yeah, we'd have to see if that does come off, but it's having a real go there into the weekend and start of next week. GFS wasn't having any of it. It was having the Atlantic having full control. But as we've alluded to over the past few days, a lot of the runs have really underestimated the strength of the cold air. With many runs who thought the cold air would be getting pushed away right now, but it's not. It's hanging around until this weekend with a real messy picture though. If you look at the GFS precipitation charts, you can see again snowfall at times, and then you see a bit of a mix as that clears through into Wednesday morning. You see it's predominantly snow across the near continent. That's because of the colder dew points there across the drier land. So again, there is a chance more of it is a snow, but latest guidance is mostly rain with a bit of high level hill snow. Next band of precipitation moves through. You can see the precipitation stays a bit more intact there into Thursday morning, and there could be, again, some snowfall along that. Not expecting massive amounts, but some snow indeed. Now the GFS clears through, and again, it's a very similar track to the UKV and the Icon, and you can see it again. It travels through that same corridor, giving heavy back edge snow. Maybe more snow in its sort of main event. It arrives as snow in some spots, but yeah, it does turn into a mix, and then mainly snow on its back edge as it clears through. Now, this is one of the runs that had it much further north as yesterday, and you can see it's trending much further southwards, so it is very much in line with the other two runs. I think we are fairly confident that this is going to be a channel low, with the main centre of the low moving through roughly the channel. Might be southern England, might just be northern France, but in that corridor, that's the most likely position, and again, heavy precipitation on its northern flank. That clears through, and again could be some more marginal snow events into the weekend and the following week, but you can generally see it's mostly rain with northern hill snow, but it would be a cold outcome with lots of sort of northwesterly winds on the cold side of the jet. Now, if you look at the GM, again, northerly winds still dominating, but slowly getting pushed away by westerlies. That low develops to our south, heavy snowfall, and then again, trying to push in easterlies with that surface high across Scandinavia, but again, not having much success. And eventually, it just goes more flat and westerly. You can still see, though, there is bitterly cold air just to our east, a real big, beastly cold pool. That is some proper air, and that got dragged in. It would be almost beast from the east-like, but you can see that high is not strong enough. It's strong enough to hold it across Eastern Europe and not allow the Atlantic to push through for Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. But for the UK, not strong enough to push it back. Again, as we'll see from the ECMWF in a few moments' time, that does something completely different. If you look at the GEM precipitation charts, again, you can see that wintriness developing over the next couple of days, heavy snowfall in places into Tuesday afternoon for Scotland and northern England, but then it turns into a bit more of a mix further southward. Still could be some snow there into Tuesday night, but again, we'll have to wait and see. Beyond that, into early hours of Thursday, again, some further snowfall along that weather front, but again, it could be a bit more marginal. And then the next band moves in, and again, a mix of rain and then eventually sleet and snow into the early hours or late hours of Thursday, early hours of Friday. You can see it's more southerly tracked, even further southwards in the GFS, down into the Channel, which means snowfall is around the London area, towards the Midlands, far south and southwest England would be really favoured for some heavy snow here as that moves through. I'm not going to have a look at it on here because it'll take a bit of time to load, but I did briefly look at the snow depth, and along the sort of peak of that precipitation, could be seeing 20 centimetres of snow, definitely amber warning territory there. And yes, it is going to be wet snow. It's not going to hang around for that long because the temperatures will likely be hovering around freezing. The ground's not going to be absolutely frozen because of the slightly milder air on Wednesday and Thursday. But it still could deliver some really quite treacherous conditions there towards the end of the week. Eventually still turning very cold into Saturday, Sunday before eventually everything pushes through. And it does slowly clear. Now, if you look at the ECMWF, this is just running as I'm recording this, and you can see again, Atlantic really trying to break through, that low developing just to our south, and then again, it's having to go with that easterly flow like the UKV was showing. Now, initially, the Atlantic does win for a little bit, but then look at this, the high pressure strengthens, and it really fights against those Atlantic systems. Now, it doesn't necessarily 100% win here, but towards the end of its run, it has a real go at trying to win. Now, the last couple of frames are not running there, but you can see it is trying to win, and that very cold air is getting exceptionally close to us just from the east. Real battleground with this big cold pool trying to nudge in from the Baltics. So a very interesting run there from the ECMWF, really trying to pull off that easterly flow. And although, yes, it's not got a load of support, and it perhaps is just one run showing this, it does highlight that the possibility of bitterly cold weather, yes, subsiding for a few days, but returning maybe with a vengeance into the middle of the month, is definitely a possible outcome. Again, we won't concentrate on too much because most runs are not showing it, but it definitely is a scenario, and runs are perhaps hinting at it being plausible. If you look at the precipitation for this, again, wintry showers around. That area of precipitation moves through Tuesday into Wednesday, but you can see it's more in the way of snow. The ECMWF is more producing snowfall from this, with, yes, some rain, a real messy mix, but wherever you've got some heavier pulses, it does drag that freezing level down, lowers the dew points, and it does turn to snow. So we'll be very interested to see. Could be a few surprise bits of snow there as that clears through. And then again, not too much with that little weather front there, Wednesday into Thursday, and then the low arrives there into Thursday, Friday. Very similar to the other runs, with significant snow all the way down to the south coast as that clears down to the out into the near continent. Again, wouldn't be surprised if it's mostly snow in some spots. We'll have to wait and see the exact details as this does develop. But yeah, looks very similar from all the runs. So some strong agreements. And then again, another transitional snow event there into the weekend as it fights up against that cold air from the east, holding off the Atlantic and keeping maybe some further snow events there longer term. But yes, a big development with that low, fairly consistent with this channel low developing. But at this stage, I will stress that there is still scope for movement, not only in the positioning and the intensities of this low, but very much in the precipitation typing. Don't take this too literally, but there will be some snow with this. That's what the models are all agreeing on. Just determining the exact timings will all depend on how this does develop over the coming days. We must remember precipitation typings. It's got so many things that feed into it, and we've seen it happen numerous times in the past few years and decades where snow events do not play out anywhere near as we expected, whether that's more snow than anticipated, less snow than anticipated, bigger, colder sectors, perhaps the low pressure system arriving an hour or two later, which means more of the precipitation falls as snow as the night allows the temperatures to drop a little bit more. All these things we have to remember and take into account, and that's what we'll continue to do over the next couple of days, really focusing on this system. Now, after you finish by looking at the latest ensembles, you can see it's a real messy picture from the GFS ensembles. You can see, though, they're all cold, all average to below average, even with the warmer spikes pushing through. It's really just getting us back towards average, but plenty of colder air masses involved. Lots of precipitation spikes longer term, but most of the ensembles have us in and around average. There are some very cold runs there, those are the runs that are kind of similar to the ECMWF operational midday run, but most are hovering around cool Atlantic and unsettled patterns. If we look at the ECMWF, the midday run is just coming out as I speak, and again, very similar. You can see that event there into Thursday, Friday. A lot more of the runs are showing the air masses not getting above freezing. That's the kind of big threshold. As long as those air masses stay -2, -3, then definitely a high chance of snow within that. Maybe even slightly milder. As long as it's freezing or below, definitely a good chance of snow within that. Again, we'll have to wait and see. And then longer term, you see most runs hovering back around average. Still cool and unsettled, but unlikely to be as cold or wintry. And then you can see the operation run does kind of tail off a little bit towards the middle of the month, around day 10. But still got a little bit of support from some runs. We'll have to wait and see. So definitely some real interest for snow over the coming days. Very messy picture over the next 48 hours, but definitely going to be some snow in places. It's going to be very difficult to pinpoint. It's going to very much be very marginal, very messy, and very localised. It could be different 10 miles down the road. You could be seeing a few centimetres of snow somewhere 10 miles down the road, and 50 metres lower in elevation could see very little at all. So it's going to be very, very marginal. It's very much going to be a nowcast event over the next few days. But if you are looking forward to some snow, then keep your eyes peeled on the live radar. And I think most importantly, when it comes to Thursday into Friday, keep your eyes out the window, because the radars will really struggle with what falls out of the sky. They are generally correct, but in these marginal situations, they're not always right. And definitely still scope for movement, but seeing some fairly strong clustering today from the operation runs for that's channel low Thursday to Friday, and some significant snow in places. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe if you're new. Of course, I expect there to be some warnings issued for this snowfall in the next day or so. And I'll see you again for another video soon.